All right, welcome to the very first recorded episode of Game Life Chronicles. In this episode, we're going to try and take a look at and celebrate creativity and innovation. And to do that, we're going to look at Fortnite map creation and user-generated content. Our guest tonight, or today, whatever you're listening to this, is Norrin. Norrin streams on Twitch under the moniker NorrinRaddSurfer. That will be linked at the end of the episode. He's been in the design industry since the 90s, and he's been working on game development through his company, Pixel and Poly. And right now, he is super focused on UGC for Epic's Fortnite. Welcome, Norrin.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. All right. So I want to make sure that every time I start these episodes, I want to know a little bit about you. I want to know what your journey has been from whenever maybe you started playing games, you got introduced to video games. Like how did you come into this space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think looking back now, it's been like such a long time ago, but I guess it started with my dad was a huge sports fan, and he had two sons that were not into sports at all. And we were young children, or young children, early adolescents at the time of the beginning of like computer games. So I would say at that point I was probably under 10 or so, but the first console that we got was Pong. So it was like a
nice.
simulated wood big box, and it had like three different Pongs on it, and we hooked it up to the TV. We started playing that, and shortly after that, I think maybe a few years after that, we got an Intellivision, which was a little before like the Ataris came out, I think, or maybe around that same time. And my brother and I both ended up getting Atari computers. So my brother got like an Atari 800. I had an Atari 400, which had like a plastic keyboard. It wasn't even keys. It was like, kind of like the keys you'd push on an ATM, where it was like plastic and you'd push into them a little bit. So if you spilled something on it,
so no clacky sound.
nothing like that. Yeah, you'd play games, but I also started like programming in BASIC that we were learning on our own. This was stuff that it was before they were even teaching stuff like that in schools. And we were just, video games became like an integral part of my life, definitely at that point, as well as the technical side of it. Because, like I said, we were, some games we were programming ourselves or writing simple programs in BASIC. And that continued, in later years in school. When school started getting some computers and they would teach BASIC already, I was doing some of that stuff, and I would program. This was before like really graphical user interfaces for paint programs or anything like that, like way before anything like Photoshop. But I always had a like an artistic or creative side from that perspective. I'm gonna see if I can fix the camera there. And I would program in BASIC drawings that I did. I specifically remember I traced a picture of Darth Vader's helmet. So this is probably around the time of like Empire Strikes Back, and early Star Wars. And I got some graph paper that was the finest fine line graph paper you could get. So most graph paper is like maybe a quarter inch for each line. This was maybe like a tenth of an inch. So the lines were tiny. And I drew the picture of Darth Vader's helmet on that, and I plotted out each point. Like every time it would curve, I would plot out hundreds of points on it. And in BASIC, you could do what's called like a draw to command. And I basically, through hundreds and hundreds of lines of BASIC, I would have it program and draw a line from each of those plotted points. And it would sit there and draw Darth Vader's helmet. And it took maybe like 5 minutes to finish drawing it. And it was kind of cool. And that was like the beginning of me saying, I love doing this artwork on the computers. I mean, it was like enthralling to me. My brother was not like that at all. He did very different stuff. But for me, I would just start programming my own art, stuff like that. And
all digital design. That's really
exactly.
cool.
So that continued. And then when I was getting ready for college, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I thought art was maybe kind of in the kind of the realm of what I wanted to do. And
Mm-hmm.
my dad would always say, "Do whatever you want to do, but whatever you're going to do, just try to be the best at it. You know, whatever you're going to do, be the best at it, and you'll be okay. You'll be able to
That's
support yourself
supportive.
and do whatever you need to." He said, if that doesn't work out, you could always go into business. But I was like, that's like the last thing that would be on my mind. Yeah,
The last resort
exactly.
from art to business.
So yeah, so I went to school for design, and I got my BFA in college, and I focused on again, this is early Mac stuff, but I focused on uh, like technology design. When I was in college, Photoshop just got released. Initially, got released while I was in college, so we were using it since like version one. This is when
Mm-hmm.
freehand was big. This is before Illustrator was even out, and eventually Illustrator came out.
Freehand?
Freehand
I
was,
don't think I've ever heard of that.
Aldus. It was called Aldus originally. Aldus Freehand, before Adobe purchased them, and
Mm-hmm.
Freehand was like the big vector illustration program before Adobe Illustrator. And
Oh,
it competed with Illustrator, and then they were both kind of top dog. And then eventually Adobe purchased Aldus. Aldus also made PageMaker, which was like at the very beginning of page layout, programs. So that
yeah.
was before like Quark Express, which is still probably used in some ad agencies, and now InDesign is pretty much used, for a lot of that stuff. Adobe kind of reigns supreme for a lot of those things. Nowadays,
Yeah, I think Adobe
yeah,
Adobe has like so much contained in
yep,
their suite. It's pretty like
yeah, yeah.
comprehensive. Even in their like Express, where you can just do those quick
Oh, yeah,
things, they have a lot of stuff
yeah,
covered.
yeah. So, but at the beginning, that was all kind of different. So we were using different software, but that was all at the beginning of desktop publishing was beginning to be huge. Again, the very beginning of like um, photo manipulation on computers, as well as
Hmm.
some 3D software was out even back then, but your rendering capabilities were extremely, extremely limited as far as what you could render and how long everything would take. But it was cool. It was a great time to kind of start because you were getting at the ground level of everything.
Hmm.
But your path to any type of career was really vague because anyone in industry really nothing had been done like that before. You know what I mean? Um, so it wasn't like you go and say, I want to get, a degree in computer gaming or anything like that. None of that stuff really didn't exist yet. So
Exist at
you're
that
kind
time,
of
yeah.
forging your own path. And I remember even in college, a lot of the classes I ended up taking, I had a few. I went to a smaller school, but I have a few of the professors that were just really, really great, like amazing professors. And a bunch of my classes were just independent studies. They were like, what can you do with the software? Just take the semester and figure out what we could do with the software. And they would use what I did during those semesters and those studies to help mold their classes in future years. And it was pretty great because I felt like it was like, this is the best way. I'm taking an upper level class and I'm kind of have free reign. But for the teachers, it was
Hmm.
important because they were getting an idea of what kind of capabilities they could do and what they could teach with future students. And
And it's you got to leave
yeah,
your
yeah,
mark, right?
yeah. So that was pretty cool. And but all along, I was kind of like gaming on and off, even through college. I was gaming. At that point, I was like a full Mac person. By the time I was in college, I was using Macs nonstop. So gaming on the Mac was very different because we were very limited. So my
Yeah. Still pretty limited
yeah,
for gaming on the
without
Mac,
a doubt,
to
you
be
are.
honest.
And I have since switched to Windows, and I do not mind that switch. I was happy to eventually make that switch, but my essentially my gaming DNA for those years were heavily Mac based. So a lot of the games that were maybe
Got
only
it.
available on the Mac, when, for example, like when Doom and Quake were coming out, um, Marathon, which was made by Bungie, who eventually ended up making Halo for
Yeah.
Xbox. Bungie originally was a Mac only company, so they created Marathon.
Really?
I have the discs here and everything. And I've tweeted out pictures of them to a couple of the guys from the original Bungie guys. Um, and Marathon was basically their take of like a first person shooter, but it ran
Hmm.
on Mac only. And originally Halo was going to be a Mac program, and Microsoft saw it and they bought it up because they wanted to get it they want it to be solely for Xbox. So they bought the company, and then it became an Xbox only product for a very long time.
The world would have been a much different place if Halo was
Yep.
a Mac
Yes. Yeah. It,
situation.
it definitely would have. So yeah. So and when I was, my early days of working, I worked in um, like mostly graphic design jobs and photography studio and some early trade show graphics. But I always worked in at home. I always did some 3D work in 3D software. Um,
Hmm.
and my gaming was probably not as heavily, you know, time. I probably didn't spend as much time gaming, especially when I was first working, because I was doing just tons of work. I would work, I'd come home, even when I was working overtime, I would come home and just do more of my own personal work just to keep up on software. And I wanted to know at that point everything I could about any software I was using. But I still gamed at that point. And then since then, I kind of like switched to Windows, and well, I've always been doing one game or the other along the way. So yeah,
Oh, okay, very nice. So that's a like a serious journey, right? Like you were mentioning things I had even no idea about, like way
yeah,
back, and that's actually really cool because you got to see a lot of like change in the industry and in the
yeah. I
world.
mean,
So that's really cool to
without
see.
a doubt. I mean, so I was in college in the '80s. I graduated early '90s. Um, I remember. I think it was in my second job that Myst came out, and this was
Mm,
before CD
hmm.
players or CD-ROM players were that popular. You could get them extra for your computer, but they weren't built into most computers at that point.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember I bought Myst. I didn't have a CD-ROM player yet, and I was like, I have to get a CD-ROM player to be able to play Myst. I think it came on like 4 CDs. I think at the time, I'm not sure. Um, so it's kind of crazy. So a lot of those games pushed hardware, solutions also. Myst was a big reason that a lot of people got CD-ROM readers in their computers or wanted to get it. So
I remember that because I was born and raised in Trinidad, so like we were a little behind
yeah,
on our
yeah,
technology. So one of the first computers we got, we had to get the like separate CD-ROM that you plugged into
yep,
the back, so you had like this separate
yep.
piece, and it's
It's
that's wild. And remember that games came on more than one disc, right?
I
Like you had to load one and
It's
then finish load
huge,
the
huge.
other.
Yeah, I mean, all the early games, all that we used to get would come on multiple floppy disks, and this is before CDs. You know what I mean? Sometimes like 8, 10 floppy disks, and then eventually CDs, and some of them might be
Hmm.
multiple CDs, and eventually like DVD came out as a viable option, and then it came on
Being able
DVDs.
to download straight to your
Yeah, and now it's all
computer
yeah,
is
now it's all
groundbreaking.
online. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're here, right? So tell us more about your journey into like this Fortnite map creation, right? Like what inspired you to start creating those maps on Fortnite?
Yeah. So I mean, I would say essentially I started playing Fortnite and kind of getting connected with, the community in general, like the community of other game players with Fortnite.
Hmm.
But no matter what game I was playing, lots of times I would be looking into games for a long time have had the ability to make some type of user generated content. I was a big Minecraft player for a while, so I would develop a couple of like resource packs where you could customize textures or different things like that. It's a
Hmm.
way for users to put their own touch on a game. And Fortnite has had for a long time, at least since I've been playing it, their creative mode that let you essentially build your own Fortnite maps in
Yeah.
Fortnite. So I started doing that and started building that. Um, this was about a year and a half or 2 years before uh, the Unreal Editor for Fortnite came out. Um,
Yeah, this was when Save the World was
yeah,
still
yeah.
big, right? Like
Save the
in
World was
the
still there.
early
I never played
Fortnite.
Save the World, but that was closer to that time. Um, and you used to be able to get a code to publish the maps that you made in Creative, but about a year and a half before UEFN came out, they stopped releasing codes because I think they knew UEFN was coming out, so they wanted to put a hold on it um, until it was released, till UEFN was released.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I started working on creative maps just as they stopped releasing codes. So even though I had a couple of maps, I could never share them with people. I couldn't play them with other people. So that kind of got frustrating because we didn't have any ETA of when they were going to start allowing people to get codes again. So I continued to make maps, and then I kind of slowed down a little bit because I couldn't really share them with people. Then eventually UEFN came out. It was a year ago in last March. Oh, it came out, a year ago in March it came out. So about a year and a half ago at this point. Um,
Okay, so for the people in the back who may not know, what is
okay,
UEFN?
so UEFN is well, Unreal Editor is a huge game engine that a huge amounts of the current games that are being played today are created in Unreal Editor. There are multiple game engines that are available, like such as Unity and I think Godot is another one. Um,
Hmm.
they're with Unreal, people build games, and when using software like Unreal, a lot of the initial development is created already. So you don't have to program every single thing from scratch. You could take what their base of their options that they have available, and you could start creating your own games. Maybe focus more on the content and the level design. There still could be a lot of programming involved, but you're not writing like a render engine from scratch, and you're not writing every little piece of it from scratch. You're starting using their basic front end or their basic components for your own game system. So
So in other words, like you don't have to worry about programming for a wall to exist because there are components for walls that already
yeah,
exist.
essentially, I'm not like the best. I'm not probably the best way to describe best person to describe it. But before programs like Unreal were available, when you had a game that was out, if it was like a first person shooter or a 3D game, you actually had
Hmm.
to write your own
Yeah.
3D render engine, which was
Okay.
incredibly difficult. Not many people could do that, and maybe you could license the engine from someone else. You know what I mean? Maybe you could
Yeah.
license the Quake engine or the Half Life engine or something. But until things like until products like Unreal came out, it when they came out, it became so much easier for game developers to start a project because the bulk of the development was done. And
Hmm.
the way that a lot of them work is that lots of times it's free, no cost to use um, up until you make a certain amount of revenue. So I'm not even sure the numbers. You could look it up, but let's say the revenue is
Yeah.
after you make $100,000 of profit, then they start taking a percentage because you've used their product. And for most people, that's
Okay.
probably more than adequate because if they spent the money to develop their own actual engines, it'd be a lot more than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a digression because uh, Unreal Editor for Fortnite is a subset of Unreal where they've taken Unreal and they've modified it slightly to work specifically with Fortnite. Fortnite itself is created in Unreal. It's created in the Unreal Engine, which is created. They're both
Yeah.
owned by Epic. Um, and basically, what they did is they took Unreal Editor and they modified it to work specifically with Fortnite in a way for you to kind of make and create maps and publish them extremely fast. So it's an amazing way to create gaming experiences that you could create and have in front of the end user in an extremely short amount of time. Um, so it's really hard to express how fast you could put something out compared to what it used to be like. You don't have to spend like 2 years in development to put a game out or an experience out. You could literally have it done in a couple months. Um,
And so when you do that, who and it's because it's hosted by Fortnite Maps, I assume. Like how who owns the creative property?
so
Like
yeah, you
how
could. I mean,
does
you
that
could read
work?
all that stuff in. There are like specific terms of services that they go through. You own all of your own creative properties. Um, Epic owns everything that's related to Fortnite and any of their assets that they do. You don't own any of that. Um, they can't use your content without specific permission, so to speak. Um,
Hmm.
and uh, if you create a specific like IP or character, that's yours and you own that.
Okay.
But you're allowed to have the end user use it, and they access it through the Fortnite uh, game. I mean, essentially, that's how they access your experiences, and that's all. It's all free to play and free to use. So anything that you
Yeah,
create, the end user will be able to play for free when it's available via Fortnite. Yeah.
that's pretty cool. All right. So all that being said, what was your first map project?
Um, I think the first one that I made was a. Um, this will be good for you because we've talked about stuff like this. The first map I made was actually a practice map, so if you're not familiar with Fortnite, it's a third person shooter.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the one of the aspects of it is that you could build forts. So you could use builds and place like wood or brick or metal builds in front of you, and use that to make small forts or block someone in. And that was the first time I ever played that had any aspect or gaming technique like that. I used to just play games like Doom or Quake or Left 4 Dead or something where you're just kind of shooting with weapons.
Yeah.
And I was really really bad at putting builds down and doing anything with that. And I feel like all the creative maps, and when I see a creative map, all the other experiences that were available that were out there by other map makers, whenever
Mm-hmm.
I played those, all right, let's get this focused again. Whenever I played those, um, everyone in those maps was so incredibly skilled that I feel like I couldn't improve because I was getting eliminated so fast.
So
Yeah,
quickly.
so
Yeah. No time to
I was
learn.
like, let me create my own experience where I could practice at what I felt like was a lower level, and
Mm-hmm.
let me take my time against it and kind of do that. So that was, I mean, the map is still up and running, and people still play it, which is kind of weird because it's really old and it doesn't get promoted at all. But it's people still play that original one. But basically, it's a practice map for you to practice your aim and practice fighting against other people or other bots, other AIs. So that,
So a nice, like, simple, slow introduction into the
yes, yep,
process, so that you're not struggling
yep,
the whole time. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about your creative process, right? So for the Fortnite, I know you've done a lot of design stuff at your company, Pixel and
yep.
Poly, but for Fortnite maps in particular, what does the creative process look like for you?
Um, I mean, it usually it stems from like a specific idea that pops into your mind, or the idea that you want to create something specifically. Now, sometimes that takes a long time. There have been many times where I'm up for creating a new map, and I just don't know what I want to create yet. And I'm not usually one to just start creating something if it's not something that I'm excited about. You know what I mean? I kind
Yeah.
of want to be excited about it or have like a reason to create something. Um, So for me, it's I'm usually just researching and staying in connection with other creators, or I love getting inspired by things that are outside of the normal realm of inspiration for games. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're on a vacation, you see something that inspires you. If you see a unique building or piece of architecture, or you're with friends at a party or a restaurant, if anything like that kind of inspires you and you say to yourself, that'd be kind of cool if you could do an experience that was like this or like that, or if you're at a
Yeah.
museum. And the nice thing about the Fortnite games or the Fortnite maps, they don't have to be like fighting maps. You could do, people have done museum maps that are museums, or maps that are
Yeah.
educational or learning. So yeah, I just like getting inspired by things that kind of like pique my interest. And sometimes I'll go through and I have like a document with, anytime I get like an idea for a map, I'll kind of jot it down and everything like that. And a lot of them, most of them I never do, but every once in a while I'll get a crazy idea and say, this would be kind of cool. And then I'll go back to it sometimes and say, oh yeah, that was kind of cool. And I'll kind of work through it. And sometimes you say
Yeah.
that'd be silly. It's not gonna be good. And other times you're like, I think that might be something. So that's usually the beginning of it.
Nice. So what challenges do you find yourself facing during this process when you're creating?
Um, I mean, there's always the first challenge of, you have an idea and you have to think to yourself, uh, well, especially, with games, you want to think to yourself, is this going to be enjoyable or playable for other people? And what is the general user base that will be interested in your type of game? If you're interested in having like an enormous amount of people playing it, you need to think one way. If you're just using it to create and to connect with maybe like a very small group of people, you want to make sure that at least those people enjoy it and have a good time doing it. Um,
Yeah.
so obviously, the first thing for me is always coming up with an idea that I'm happy with. But after that, I have more of a uh, creative, and I would say creative bordering on like the visual and technical aspect of the game design and creation. But
Yeah.
there are some very heavy programming aspects, and probably my hardest reach for some experiences is like I don't really have my programming experience is very limited at this point. I have some, but not very much. Um, so for me to create some things, it really helps to kind of branch out, maybe partner up with someone. So I do work with people at sometimes to kind of like collab on maps where they might do more programming aspects, and I'll do more of the design and creative. When I say creative, I'm
Okay.
not saying programming is not creative because I think it is, but maybe more of like the actual,
The
the
aesthetics of it.
visual and aesthetics of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Have you ever like taken on a project or started or done a project that you got through and then you're like, no.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. I mean, I definitely have. The one weird thing with the UEFN is you can't delete projects. So every time you start
Oh.
something, it's there, sitting there constantly. So I have numerous maps that I've started. There are some that I've started and spent 100 hours on, and I just get to the point where I'm thinking this is not going to work out. You know what I mean? Or this is not doing what I really want it to do. And you don't,
Hmm.
I mean, it's good that you can't delete it from that perspective because you can always look at it later and maybe kind of re-examine it. But there are a lot of times that you just working on something and you just say this is not everything I want it to be, and I don't want to kind of work on something and release it where it's at least up to that level. You know what I mean? So you kind of just push it
Yeah.
aside sometimes and you start working on something else. So I think that's very, very common. We have like an inside joke of all the map creators that it's like, you think of something cool and you start working on something, but you literally have like three other projects you're working on at the same time. Do you stop and not work on it? No, you kind of start working on it also, and you kind of. I try not to do that too much, but I definitely always have like a few projects that I have open that I could kind of just test out ideas. You know what I mean? Like have like a mini
Yeah.
test of it and see how it goes, and maybe jot some ideas down. But I think it's very, very common to have a project going, and I think it's important when you have a project going to know when to walk away from it. That doesn't mean throw it away, but it's good to know when there's something you have that you should walk away from. There are,
Put it
yeah,
down and see if when
yeah,
you come back, you'll get a
yeah,
different
yeah.
perspective.
Not everything needs to be finished. So I think
Typically, how many hours are you spending? Like a map that's successful that you've released that people are playing, how many hours typically
I,
would you spend
I would say
on it
it
from
varies. I
start
would
to
say at the
finish?
minimum we're probably looking at probably like that 90 to 100 um,
Ooh.
of hours, and there are definitely maps that have hit like 200 or so. I mean, you could push out something that's really very, very simple, um, but even the more basic ones, by the time you're done with it and you're fine tuning it to the point where it's like usable by everyone else, and you've fixed the things that
Hmm.
you want to fix, it's rare that would be anything less than 100 hours. I mean, I honestly I can't picture anything less than 100 hours for pretty much any of the maps that I've done that are. I've had some like goof maps and everything, but
Yeah.
any of the real maps, I would say 100 is probably the bare minimum. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
dedication.
And the good thing is here's the thing where we're relating to maps. Okay, that seems like a lot, but the truth is relating to like a game that you're releasing to the public and getting it out
Hmm.
there. 100 hours is nothing. You know what I mean? So I may have spent a few months working on those maps. But the fact that I could spend like a month or two working on some of those maps and get them released to the public and have them up and running and be
Hmm.
completely functional is kind of amazing because like in any other time that wouldn't be the case. You know what I mean? So again, the time that we could start with an idea and get something out to the customers or out to the end user this fast
Hmm.
is it's like such an amazing thing to pump out stuff as quickly as we can. It's
Have you ever considered doing your own indie game, like outside of Fortnite?
I mean, I haven't really, and the truth is, I think there's such a high failure rate for games in
Yeah.
general. Um, the one nice thing about uh, doing game design at this day and age is there's so many amazing options to get your game or product to the users, whether it's through something like Epic, or Unreal, or the Epic Store, or Steam. There's
Hmm.
so or or GOG. There's so many ways to get your games to the end user. But because of that, also, just like on iOS and everything, because it's pretty simple to do that, there are thousands and thousands of games every year
Flooded.
that get pushed out there. And if you start self-publishing, I'm not saying don't do this. There are plenty of people that self-publish games that that do really well and make it. And if they didn't do that, we would never play those games. You know what I mean? Like Stardew Valley is
Yeah,
like one of my favorite games, and if that game wasn't
such
done
a
that
good
way, I
one.
never would have played it and everything. Um,
Hmm.
but there is a lot of noise when you publish a game out there, and unless you're gonna really push it and do everything you possibly can to get it out there and get it marketed the correct way, I'd probably be hard pressed to ever do that. Um,
Mm.
and in a way, the same thing is with like in the Fortnite ecosystem. When you're pushing a map out, um, but we could do that with a lot less overhead than we can like
Yeah,
a full game. You know,
and you sort of already have like a built-in audience,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Because people
you
who come to
do.
Fortnite.
Honestly, it's really really difficult to have a Fortnite map do well. Two things. It's really difficult to have a Fortnite map do well enough where a large amount of people get to play it, and it's
Hmm.
even harder to get a Fortnite map to do well where you're actually earning. I'd like to say even a livable wage. For you to put a map out
Mm.
there to earn a livable wage is almost impossible. Let's put it that way. And I would say the same thing is probably with most game design. When you're putting a game out there, if you're self-publishing, the chance of that game doing really really well, where you can kind of walk away and say, "Oh, I've made really good money," is kind of like the music industry. You could make music and you could put it out there and maybe sell some CDs and be really happy that you're a musician. But the chance of you becoming a musician where you're living large and you're
Super.
living off your music and your music is probably small. But if those are different goals, you know what I mean. So that's definitely something every individual needs to take a look at. Everything.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay, so the Fortnite map community, right? Like, how would you describe that Fortnite creative community? Because I'm assuming there is a community. There are a bunch of map
Oh yeah.
creators. There must be a way that you guys like, connect. How do you guys support each other? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, there is actually an amazing community. I felt like the community was really really good even before UEFN, and there are definitely a significant amount of, we like to call them like the OG creators. These are the people that have been creating maps before UEFN was released. So been creating maps for probably the past, before the past 2 years. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
the 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 community since UEFN has come out has drastically changed. Um,
Hmm.
and the amount of competition has grown. There's probably at this point, we're probably getting close to about 30,000 map creators. Um,
Whoa.
and I mean, you could check the stats on like Fortnite GG, which is a third party site. But I would say, according to their stats right now, only less than 4% of all those creators have made over $10,000. So out of the, let's say, 30,000 at this point creators, less than 4% have earned over $10,000. And if you're doing this part time, like if you're in college or something, or in high school, and you make a few $1,000s, that's awesome. But if
That's
you're trying to
great.
do this as, that's why people always ask and say, "Oh, can you make money off this?" I was like, "Well, you probably make more money working at, a fast food restaurant 40 hours a week, than you would do this." But if you want to get into game design and you're interested in it, I definitely recommend it. But going back to the community is really great. So there are a huge amount of us on Twitter X, that kind of connect with each other, and we complain together, and get annoyed together. And a lot of us, especially the people that are kind of on the lower end side, were vigilant about supporting each other also, and helping each other
Yeah.
out, answering each other questions. And there are I never really used Discord that much especially until the UEFN community was kind of like really connecting there. There are a lot of Discords where we're pretty good about helping each other to the best we can. Um, so I would say the community is pretty awesome, from that perspective. I've met and interacted with like a huge amount of really really nice creators from all across the world, and I would say generally we're we're right with each other to to help and support each other, which has been really nice. So it's been good.
Yeah, it's always really positive to have a community, especially for something like this, where we many people know everyone is not making
Y-
like big
y-
bucks, right? There's no one
yes.
who's
Yep.
out there.
Yep. And I would say we definitely this community has its own challenges because I mean, kind of when you have your own, if you were publishing or self-publishing a map, that is just independently published, or you're publishing it, you have to worry about marketing and doing those types of things. But for the most part,
Yeah,
you could still do that with a Fortnite map. But the biggest way people find your Fortnite map is through what's called
word of mouth.
Discover, and those are the maps that are outwardly facing to the Fortnite players when they launch Fortnite. Those are all the maps you see on the main screen when you scroll up and down. Um, and when your map is on one of those pages, and especially on that front page that you see, the chance of it doing well is skyrockets. You know what I mean? And if it's
Oh
not on that
yes.
page, it's really hard for you to get players at all unless you have some type of community where you can connect with people, whether it be social media on Twitter or TikTok or YouTube or Twitch if you're a streamer. Um,
Hmm.
so it can be really, really difficult, and it's been a challenge for many of us navigating the best ways to maybe hope your map gets into Discover, and the best ways that we could try to get our maps to be seen. That's been a huge struggle for most of us, I would say.
Interesting. So but apart from the Discord, are many map creators like on the extra social medias, like I know you mentioned Twitter, X, Twitter, whatever,
Yeah,
but like are they on the Instagrams and
yeah. I
TikToks?
mean, I think most of the map creators that I'm connected with are definitely on X. I still dread calling it X because people just like, what are you talking about? Oh no, I'm actually talking about the social media platform X. Okay, yeah. So most of us, I would say, a huge number of us are on Twitter. In that regard, the problem that I ran into, and this is one of the reasons why I started streaming as well, is most of the people that I'm connected with from on that on Twitter or other map
Hmm.
creators. And while we're happy to
Yeah,
support each other and say your map
can't
looks
play
great
everyone's map.
and stuff like that, it's still a pretty small amount. And those aren't the end users that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for other map creators. I'm looking for people to play my map, and those are the map players, not the map creators. Um, and truthfully, if you're not a huge streamer, it's hard to
Hmm.
make a dent in who's playing your map.
Yeah.
But that was one of my reasons for to start streaming, because I said, if if I'm not going to at least invest my own time in trying to develop a small enough community for people to maybe play my maps and maybe other people's maps as well, if I can't put my time into doing that, then I really shouldn't stand back and complain about people no one playing my maps if I'm not going to kind of invest my own time into creating a community to play the maps. Um, so it's one of the unfortunate things, but it comes with like any business. Like if you're gonna create the most amazing product in the world, but no one sees it, no one's gonna play or use that product. So
Yeah.
that's why when you're working for a company and it has a huge sales force, and those salespeople have nothing to do with creating the product or inventing the product or researching it. A lot of times, those salespeople make a lot of money because they're the ones getting it in front of the end user. And in the end, the way it's marketed is as important as
The most
as it's being
important.
created.
Yeah.
Because if no one plays it, then no one sees it. So yeah, that's the unfortunate side of it. You know,
Yeah. So you have to do like a lot of self work and self promotion and stuff like that to
yeah,
get
you
it
really
out
have
there.
to. Yeah, a huge amount, a huge amount.
What are the chances are of maps getting onto that Discover page?
I mean, we don't really know. The Epic has been very limited in what they say affects getting into Discover, but I think over the past year and a half, we've kind of learned that most maps, as long as they're playable, functional maps, will end up in
Hmm.
Discover when the map is first released for a little while. Um, how often or if it will come back at all will depend on how many people have played that map when it was in there, how long they've played it, and also like retention, where is if they played it, will they come back to it again after
Hmm.
it's gone from Discover? So they say that they look at like hundreds or thousands of data points, we do not know what all those data points are. And if someone were to figure all of it out, they would, they'd be living large. So it's been a
Mm,
really rough challenge for most people to figure out the best way to do it. The reality is, if you have someone release a map and they could get hundreds of people to start playing that map and continue to play it, then there's a good chance it will pop into Discover and stay in Discover and probably return in Discover. Um, but most people don't have that outreach to like just automatically have hundreds of people play their map, at the drop of a hat. Even smaller or even medium streamers may only have um, between 10 and even, let's say, 100 people watching their streams. And someone who adds like 100 people in their streams on a regular basis is a fairly big streamer, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And even
absolutely.
that may not be fully enough to get a map to consistently stay in Discover. So it's been a very rough road for a lot of map creators. So unfortunately, there's no easy answer for that.
No
Yeah.
easy answer, no easy fix.
No.
Okay, so speaking of the community and collaborations, have there been any like notable or impactful collaborations for you? Anyone
Yeah,
you've
I
worked
mean,
with that you like?
yeah, one of the hard things, well, to kind of like back that up a little bit, when you create a map with Fortnite, every map is a commercial map, which means people don't pay to play your map, but every time your map is played, it starts generating income. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and at this point, which I hope they change, Epic has no way. You could create a collaboration with someone else, but whoever is the map owner, essentially, which will be just one person or
The
one
main
company,
account.
one account, um,
Mm-hmm.
that's the person who gets paid, or that's the entity that gets paid, because it can be like a corporation. Um,
Yeah.
so there's no way to collaborate someone and split that revenue automatically through Epic, which would be that's what I'm hoping they do eventually. It'd be make collaboration so much easier. So when you collaborate on a map with someone, you are entering into some type of business agreement, and you have to work with someone that you trust enough to pay
Pay
you
you
or
if
split
you.
funds with and work out taxes with if your map makes us enough money. So I've been reluctant to do it, but just the last map that I worked on, I released with Zero Shot Bob, and he's another older gamer, like someone in his 50s like me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been like a really great collaboration. It's been amazing working with him, and it's he comes from like a programming background, whereas I come from a design background, and it's it's just been amazing. Like I couldn't have asked for like a better collaborator for maps from this perspective. It's been great. It's been really great. And I've been wanting. I would have worked with other people along the way also, but you have to step back and say, I like this person. Do I know them well enough to be a
Put yourself
business
out
partner
there
with
like
them?
that.
That's a big step. So if Epic had a way to say, listen, this map, the revenue will be split 50-50, and whatever happens will be split 50-50, that'd be one thing. I'd probably take more risks. But when you start doing a collaboration where with someone, you're entering into like a business agreement, um, and you have to really kind of say, do you want to work with this person enough to say that they're my business partner? you know so it's a lot. It's not something that someone should just like, look at lightly.
Yeah.
So yeah, you
You
never
never
know.
know. You never know.
You never know.
Yeah. All right. So I'm wondering, would you like to show us one of your maps? Showcase one of your maps?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, what's the easiest way to do it? We could do it. I could just, depending on time wise, I can like just go through some images like on like the Fortnite page and just show you like the images of the maps from the page.
Yeah.
That might be
Do
the easy
that.
way to do it. All right, let me open up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, so I mean, I must admit, Epic's been amazing about their support for the map creators, and they've given us a lot of tools to help promote our maps and a lot of analytics for us to go through and track different things in our maps and track what kind of how many users are playing our maps. So they've been really amazing from that perspective. The map community does like to complain a lot, but I will give Epic props for just putting out some really amazing products and tools for us to kind of just help ourselves, do this. So one of the things
Yeah.
that they've done as you become a map creator, um, you get an official page through the Fortnite site. So this is my page at fortnite.com/at Pixel and Poly. And if you go there, that's where all my maps reside. And you could, as long as you're logged in with Fortnite, you could favorite any of these maps and add them to your favorites list. You could rearrange it so certain maps pop up, higher or lower. Um, so this, I'll show you. You had asked me which this map right here, the one down here, the non-sweaty practice map. That's my
Yeah.
very first map that's the first one I created, again for myself, and it was a learning experience because this was all done not in UEFN. This was done in Creative.
Hmm.
We like to say Creative 1.0. So it was done. You would kind of build it inside of Fortnite. That's literally where you built it. You didn't. It wasn't in a separate program,
Yeah.
so you built it in there, and you could. There was no programming per se, but there was like a visual programming through. They used to use channels, but they switched to devices and event binding, which you could still use in UEFN, and which I
Hmm.
still do use. Um, so that was the first practice map that I built, and that was the first map that I built. And then the second map that I built was this hidden puzzle parkour. I love parkour maps, and I still play them, and I enjoy
Yeah.
them a lot. So I built this one again. This one was built in Creative also. Um, when you click on the maps, it will take you to the maps page. Like if you were logged in, you could favorite it, and when you go inside of Fortnite, it will be added to your favorites page, and you could play it that way.
Hmm.
Um, and it's so Epic has provided us the ability to kind of create these automatically for ourselves, which is really nice. Um, uh, so I could just go through some of the maps that.
Yeah, whichever you
Yeah,
want
so
to.
the first one, this was again on a practice map that I did. This was the hidden puzzle parkour was a parkour map, and I just added tons of like a lot of parkour maps, which are kind of like death runs, where you kind of like obstacle courses. Think of them,
Yeah,
and
and go to
yeah,
get the
you jump
points.
around and collect the coins exactly. And a lot of maps will have a lot of times they'll have hidden items. Like you may run the whole map and uh, find like the 5 hidden items throughout it. And I was like, oh, that'd be kind of interesting. What if there was a whole parkour map, but the whole concept behind it was there were not just a few, like multiple hidden items. So like every time you try to collect something, you're like, wait, is there something else hidden that I'm missing? So this one's pretty cool. Again, it was done in Creative 1.0, and I still like it. It was a really really fun map, and it was a learning experience. And every time you do a map and you kind of finish it off and you add other ideas, you're like, oh, I guess I would have done things differently. But this was still a fun map, and it still gets some plays. Not as many. After the maps have been around for a long time, once they don't get many plays, they almost never pop up into the Discover. So the only time people will play them
Yeah.
is if they happen to maybe see some of your maps and maybe check out some of your other maps. Um,
Hmm.
so along those lines, pretty much everything after those are all maps that were built in UEFN. So I would say the the next map that I built was PLE's Pixel Parkour, and I think this one has a little trailer in it, so you could see. Oh, there's a media file right here. Um, but on this one, again, it's another parkour map, and I kind of had the idea: what if the parkour map? I think you played this one, but
Yeah, old
yeah,
school
yeah. What if it was like
pixelation.
the concept was what if it was like the same resolution as a Game Boy? So the original Game
Yeah,
Boy started like with the kind of the green screens, and eventually they got like the gray screens, and then there was like a Game Boy Color. So
yeah,
it's basically the same resolution as a Game Boy screen. Um, I love this map. A lot of the people like a lot of my friends uh, really struggled with the map, and they played it over and over and over again to get really good times. And some people got times that were so fast that it was faster than any of my fastest times. So it was hard for me to imagine how fast I got this done. But it did not appeal to a lot of people. A lot of people did not like the idea that it's pixelated. Um, so
I like the idea that it started getting the color, but I couldn't see for the first set of the
yeah, it's
grayscale
it's
stuff.
it's
It was
rough. It is
hard.
it is
Yeah,
rough. You know what I mean? And that was part of the challenge because it definitely made it. Some of the parkour aspects were really simple, except for the fact that it was very low res. You know what I mean? So that was
yeah.
part of it. Um, Here's the funny thing is Epic has a category on the Discover page called Epic's Picks, and those are the only maps on
Mm-hmm.
Discover that are hand curated. So you could submit your map and try to get it picked. It's extremely difficult to get your map into an Epic's Pick. When it's there for a whole week, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the first
Yeah.
map that I submitted for Epic's Picks, and I don't think I got rejected. It came back maybe 2 months later, and
Oh no.
their only comment was that it was headache inducing, which I which I thought was not really professional. I would have said it. I would have phrased it a different way, but
Wow.
headache
Headache
inducing. They
inducing.
said headache inducing at times. I wore it as a badge of honor, and I remember I screen grabbed that and tweeted it out, saying, what are you going to do? Um, I mean, I've worked in industry for many years, and I would
Mm-hmm.
never reply to something like in that way. I would say, maybe the low res aspect just didn't work, or people struggled with it and everything. I wouldn't have phrased it that way, but people are going to do what they do. So I ended up making a duplicate of the map. There are ways to kind of like duplicate maps, but we found there might be issues with that from a Discover perspective. So this
Yeah.
this map right here, Peely's color parkour, which I don't think I have a trailer for, is the exact same map, but instead of being pixelated, everything starts like grayscale, and you kind of gain color as you get along. Um,
Yeah.
but to me, it takes the uniqueness out of it. People did play it and everything. I just didn't like it as much as I did not like it as
The
much as
pixelated one.
the pixelated one.
Headache
Yeah,
inducing
that
is
was yeah
wild.
that was yeah that was a little wild. So I was
Yeah.
I was surprised when they said that. Even if I didn't disagree, I was just surprised. I was surprised that they would word it like that. But it was okay.
Yeah.
We're not really sure who actually reviews the maps. We don't even know if it's internal people or if they outsource it. We really have no idea. There's no information whatsoever. Um,
Jeez Louise.
so
Okay.
I'm trying to think what else. The practice map that you and I played together, which is this one right here, the non-sweaty
Yeah.
practice map. I don't know if there's a trailer for that one or not. I don't think I have a trailer in this one. Um, so this practice map was basically based off of my very first one that I did. You're able to take a map that you created in Creative 1.0, and you can bring that into UEFN. And from that
Okay.
point, I was able to expand it and add a lot of things. I never really. There's some people that love building in Creative, but to me, it seemed like very clumsy. I have like a heavy 3D background, using 3D
Yeah.
applications, and UEFN is essentially a 3D program with other aspects also. So UEFN, you're
Mm-hmm.
working on Unreal, just seemed natural to me. So I was able to take that map and expand on it greatly. The funny thing is, the original ones, people still play the original one on a regular basis. I don't know who they are, but thank you, people, for jumping in there and still playing it. You could put like little boards up saying, "Hey, there's a newer version of this map, which much more, many more features. It's this map right here," but they still go back into it. So whatever works for them. So that was probably the next one I did, and I started actually kind of expanding that one. Um, I'm trying to think. After that one was out, I made another copy of that one, which is this one right here. So I created a customized version of that one for Russell, who is another
Russell
streamer. So
Royale.
Russell, basically, he has his own practice map. He was playing it. He was playing my practice map for a while. I was like, I'll just make a one that's branded for Russell. So I don't think he jumps in it too much anymore, but it was kind of cool and it was kind of fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm trying to think. I have some other ones there. You could do maps for rocket racing inside of Fortnite. So this Tornado Alley was my first racing map that I did. Um, and then I did a gun game, gun games were really popular when UEFN came out, and I was like, I don't like jumping on bandwagons of map styles that are very popular or map modes. I
Mm-hmm.
usually don't like say, oh, they're popular, I'm going to do that right now. So of course I did this one way after the gun games were really popular, but I had an idea for it like maybe 9 months later, and I was like, this is going to be really
Yeah.
cool, and I completed it and submitted it about. I submitted it for Epic's Picks about 2 months before Halloween because it's literally a
Mm-hmm.
Halloween themed map, um,
Yeah.
and it didn't get picked. And then about a month after Halloween, okay, this is like I think it was in the middle of November. it got picked, and it got picked for Epic's Picks. it, it got
The
the
Halloween
Halloween theme.
themed one got
It was
picked
right around
after
Thanksgiving. I
Halloween.
remember that. So I guess pumpkins were still kind of like, you know.
Pumpkins could be
So it did
Thanksgiving.
get
Yeah.
picked for Epic's Picks during like the Thanksgiving week, I believe, and I was ecstatic. I was really happy. I did try to make it. It's pretty polished. I mean, everything looks really good, and everything is the gameplay
Hmm.
is really balanced. As long as you have like at least maybe like 5 people in it, it plays really well. There's some like really cool events that happen every 10 minutes, and um, I was just really excited that that got picked. I didn't at that point. I had submitted a couple of maps, and I was just surprised that it got picked, and I was very very happy. Um, and oh, I sorry. I forgot. This the Soldiers vs Aliens.
Soldiers
That
versus
was probably
Aliens.
my first big map that I did. That might have been before my Peely's Pixel Parkour. Um,
Hmm.
they actually had a call out the first summer after UEFN came out. So UEFN came out in March of 22. So this was the summer probably of 22. They had a call out for, I think it was like a team based games. I don't remember. I don't think it was space related, but I did this Soldiers vs Aliens again. I love this map, and I still update it. Um, really unique. I really haven't played any of the maps that are quite like it and everything. It did not. I submitted that for Epic's Picks. It did not get picked for Epic's Picks. Um, uh,
I would love to know what determined what gets
I
picked for
don't know. I
Epic's.
mean, it's kind of odd because when most people generally when most maps get denied, all they say is the environment needs improving. That's literally what they say. Environment needs improving.
Hmm.
Um,
Unless it's headache inducing.
unless it's headache inducing. I must admit, this might be the only map, the Peely's Pixel Parkour, that has ever gotten that rejection. That might be the only map that's ever gotten that. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it is. So Soldiers vs Aliens. That was the first map that I did that I easily had like 200 hours on, and again, I continue to update it and make changes to it. And when new things come out,
Yeah.
I add it. Excuse me, I add it to the map. Um, so I still enjoy the map. That's why I kind of push it up high on this one. Um, and then I would say before the map that Bob and I released, which is not on my page because it's under Bob's account. Uh, the last map before that
Go to
was my Go to
golf.
Golf, which again I created. I mentioned this before to people. It's like I lost my dad, who was this past year, who was a big golfer, and
Hmm.
I had a really rough time for months. After that, and I didn't know what to do. I really had no inspiration, and I was just walking, and I didn't know really what to work on. And I kept on thinking to myself, I was like, maybe I'll just do like something with a golf course. You know what I mean? And you could create really
Yeah.
cool landscapes with Unreal or UEFN. And I just started at that point, just started sketching layouts for like golf courses. And if one thing I learned after all the maps
Like
is,
legitimately
yeah, literally
sketching.
sketching. Yeah,
Like
I would say most of my maps I usually start with actual physical sketches. Yeah.
a paper sketch.
Um, uh,
That's impressive.
I would say almost all of them I do. Definitely Soldiers vs Aliens. I spent probably a week just sketching ideas of how I want like the different landscapes to be and the different this is all takes place in space. And the same thing with Go to Golf. I literally just started sketching out. Um, when you're working with assets like this, it's best to work within either square or rectangle spaces, and landscapes are almost always
Hmm.
square. So I started sketching out different golf courses that might work, and how they would lay out in like a square. And I just would sketch out different things and where sand traps might be and water hazards. And um, uh, if one thing I learned is whatever you have idea, just scale it back a little bit. So I was like, oh, I could do 18 holes. I'm like, let's do
That's a
nine
lot.
holes and 9 hole golf course.
Yeah.
And so I just started sketching out courses and would do a few and kind of erase it and pencil and paper. And then literally when I started this one, I literally scanned in my sketch, and I kind of just started, with the landscape tool, started kind of like moving and painting and stuff over the sketch to create the course. That's literally how the course got created. And
So for like, I guess go to well. go to golf might be a little easier, but for something like soldiers versus aliens, how close do you get to your sketch? How close are you able to get to your
Um,
sketch?
let's see. I think there might be a trailer in this one too. Uh, you could get surprisingly quick on or surprisingly close for a lot of these things. Um, so when I sketch landscapes on these, I'll usually do like a top-down view of the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, this one started way too big, so I ended up having so many floating islands and different structures. You could see a lot of them in the background, even on the trailer here.
Yeah.
And after playing it for a while, I realized that it's just too big. You know what I mean? And
Okay.
some of these areas looked really cool. Excuse me, but I, I realized that they looked nice, but it wasn't helping the gameplay. So I ended up actually deleting areas that I thought looked amazing and were really cool to go to, but people weren't utilizing them, and it just didn't make for better gameplay. So
They
I
were
just
just
deleted it. They
there.
were just there. And yeah, again, you want to make sure that if something's there, it has a use and people are utilizing it. So
Yeah.
it took a lot to go through, and I actually went through and deleted some sections. I'll try to find like some of the sections that maybe are still in the trailer that I kind of. Right, well, so all of these, there was a whole area on the side that had these floating islands.
Mm-hmm.
All those are gone, and a lot of the weapons, the bases are kind of still there. Um, like there were all these floating islands off to the side, which were in like low gravity. Those look really
Yeah.
cool. Those are all gone. It just made for
Because they were right next to the
they were pretty
bases,
close
right?
to the
Like they.
bases. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it took a while for me to say. Yeah, sometimes it's good. You have to step back and say, I know you spent a lot of time on it, and they look great. Does this help the game? And if it doesn't, you might want to just delete it. You know what I mean? Or put it somewhere it's not
Yeah.
being used or something. So in both these cases, the the landscape and the general game area were really close to the sketches. Um, and especially with like the go to golf, like the course. If I still have like the sketch somewhere, but if you were to look at the sketch of the course, um, it's extremely close to how the holes are laid out. I mean, I literally used it as like a template and kind of I would modify things as they did if they didn't work or if it needed to be moved or adjusted. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, they're really close.
It's good. Okay, so thank you for showing us those
Oh
maps.
yeah,
That's
yeah, of
really
course.
cool, and we'll make sure and we'll link it at the bottom of
Yeah.
the video wherever we hosted the video. So impact wise, right? Like, what impact do you think these custom maps have on the Fortnite gaming experience, right? Like, how are they pushing and working the creativity and innovation within Fortnite?
Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know if they make really that much of an impact. If I could be honest, I mean, I try to make
Mm-hmm.
experiences that I'm proud of. Again, for the most part, I have put out maps that I lots of times I'm putting out maps that I'm just trying to test something, or it's kind of like as a goofy thing. Like these pizza maps are just kind of like really goofy maps, and like the Peely Man is kind of like a weird take on Pac Man. That was testing out some like new styles of things. Um, I don't know if any of my maps are actually making that much of an impact. I will say that a lot of the maps that I'm making may not definitely may not fully appeal to the huge audience of the Fortnite main player base. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
older gamer, and I think a lot of the maps might appeal maybe more to like not necessarily only older gamers, but gamers maybe a slightly different taste in games than me. When my Go to Golf got picked for Epic's Picks, it did really well for any of my maps. How did it do compared to other maps that have been in Epic's Picks? Probably not that great. But I also don't
Mm-hmm.
think most of the general user base of Fortnite are totally into just taking a slow stroll on a golf course and not shooting each other. You know what I mean? But I was aware of that. But
Yeah.
I'm happy that I could still put a map out there. Um, it got about 500,000 plays,
Oh.
so that means at least that many people. Now, let's say even half of those people left right away, saying, "What the heck is this?" maybe it got 250, maybe it only got 200,000 plays where people were actually enjoying it and playing it. In my mind, that's, doesn't matter the amount, but there's a certain amount of people that played it and enjoyed it that maybe didn't or weren't able to have that type of experience anywhere else in another Fortnite map. You know what I mean? I know that's not going to hit like
Yeah.
their main audience, but I'm okay with that. If my main goal was only to make money, um, doing Fortnite maps, I
It'll
would be
be
creating
different.
other maps than what I'm creating. I'm trying to create experience. It's always important for me to create experiences that I enjoy playing. If I don't enjoy playing it, when you create a map, you have to play it and test it over and over and over and over again. It's crazy. Like Bob and I were talking on our last map. Like he was like saying, how many times do you think you've been in a cage? Like in our latest map, you have like these 1v1 fights inside of this cage. He's like, how many cage fights do you think you've been in? And we were both like, I don't, probably hundreds and hundreds. You know what I mean? Because we've tested the map
Yeah.
over and over again so many times. And the truth is, when I test my maps, I still go in and I'll test it, and I have to try out one thing, and I'll usually end up playing the map for a while because I'm enjoying it. And I want to make maps
Yeah.
that I enjoy playing, and that's it. For the idea of me making a map that I don't enjoy, kind of pains me, and that's why I try to like make maps um, that I just enjoy playing and that I like playing. And I know it won't appeal to everyone. I'm okay with that. I hope it hits a certain user
Yeah.
base. So
I mean, it makes it easier to do 100 hours
Yeah,
of work on it if
without
you
a doubt.
you
I
know
mean,
want to enjoy it.
without a doubt. So it's hard for me to say. I don't know if my maps have really made that much of an impact. If someone's played my maps and really loves them, then it makes me happy. You know what I mean? I've gotten some nice comments. People, have said they enjoy playing them, and I'll go back and you can check
Hmm.
to see how many people have played your specific map on any given day. And when I go in and look,
Hmm.
and sometimes I'll check one of my maps, like I might check like one of my practice maps or my Soldiers and Aliens map and see that it only got 2 plays that day, but the average play time was like an hour and 10 minutes. And I'll sit back and say, you know what, that person, even though I only made probably
Enjoyed it.
like 2 cents from that, um, that person played that map for over an hour on their own, essentially. And to
Hmm.
me, that's worth more than seeing, thousands of plays of people just because it was pushed in front of their face. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
those people that really enjoy the map, that keep on coming back to it and are really connecting with it. That it really means a lot. It does, and it's really nice to see that. That to me, that's like the greatest thing when I see that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and showcasing your maps. And just a couple more questions. So, as we're getting to the end, like, do you have any advice for aspiring Fortnite creators, right? Like, tools you may recommend or how they may navigate the challenges of coming into this industry, coming into creating these maps?
I mean, the only thing I'll say is, and I've had this discussion with other people on on Twitter about map creation, and the only thing I'll say is there's no single path to game development or
Hmm.
life or creativity in general. People could come from all different backgrounds and all different experiences and get to a point of success. So if you don't have a background in game development or 3D or design, whatever it is, that don't let that stop you. Every individual has their unique experiences, which will
Hmm.
bring a unique take on anything they create. Um, so when I was younger, if you learn something new, lots of times you're like, oh, I don't want to tell everyone how I did this technique or that technique because you kind of don't want them to kind of steal it from you in a way. But the older I got,
Yeah.
the more I realized that when I personally learn something or anyone learns something, if somebody else learns it, what they create with it will be completely different than what you create as an individual. So just share away. And a lot of other people that I respect in all different communities are the people that that will happily share their knowledge, with other people,
Yeah.
because everyone's going to create something different, and their own life experience will kind of mold that. So I guess the first thing would be just if you're interested in it, just kind of jump in and start creating. There's so many resources to learn. Epic has provided uh, an enormous amount of templates and introductory tutorials to get started in
Hmm.
creating. Um, and if it's something that you're really interested in, just take the time. And I mean, it takes a lot of time. It takes hundreds and thousands of hours to become even proficient at anything, especially something like this. So just jump in. Don't expect it to come super easy, and be willing to put some hard work in. And you'll.
Yeah.
I just recommend just trying it. You know, even if it's something that you want to do for yourself, I'd say it's worth learning a little bit about it to see if it's a good fit for you.
Yeah. Makes sense. No, it's like I appreciate you having this conversation with me. It was like I learned a lot about that whole process, like because you see a lot of it like peripherally, right? Like you see these maps turn out, even just like hanging out with you. I talk to you, you don't understand how like in depth it
Oh
actually
yeah, yeah, it's
gets with
crazy.
each map. So that's interesting. No, I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming on, sharing your insights. And do you have any final thoughts or shout outs? You use this time as well to like plug anything, right? Like you can plug your maps, plug your Twitch, plug Pixel and Poly, anything you'd like
Yeah,
to plug, shout
yeah.
out.
Well,
Now's your
first
time.
you're welcome. It's an honor to be here with Sparky P. You know,
Hey.
nothing. I'm just happy to be a part of this streaming community, and the map making community, and it's the friendships that I made along the way has been probably one of the best things that has happened regarding all this. So yeah, I would say if anyone's interested in checking out the maps, you could go to Fortnite.com/@ symbol pixel and poly, all one word. And I stream under NorrinRaddSurfer on Twitch. So that probably sums it all up.
All right, perfect. And we'll make sure we'll tag all of that, have all that tagged on all the videos so you can click and follow it to our favorite Norin Rad Surfer. Listen, I'm telling you guys, wonderful streamer. Find him, watch him, enjoy it. Thanks for listening to Game Life Chronicles, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Game on.